Hey, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. So, well, thanks everyone for joining. So let me start. I'll introduce myself. So I'm Erik Weiss. I run the CPG and retail practice here at Neustar. Neustar, we are a unified identity and unified analytics provider for a lot of the biggest CPG and retailers, as well as other major advertisers. And I'm really happy to have Laura Newman here from Kellogg. So Laura, I mean, a little bit of your background. I know you've been on different continents, different countries, different divisions of Kellogg for, I think,
That's
close
right.
to 18 years. But why don't I let you introduce yourself and then we'll dive into it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Eric. So, yeah, I've been with Kellogg. It will be 19 years this year, which is crazy. And it's probably often quite surprising to hear that someone's been at a company for that long, right? And I've been really fortunate, though. I've had a really dynamic career and experiences. You can probably tell from the accent, I'm not from the States. So I started in the UK. I actually started out in sales. And so I did 4 years in sales, and then I moved over to the dark side of marketing. And I've been fortunate to manage a number of brands at Kellogg's. And then I moved to Dublin for a couple of years in Ireland, where I managed the Crave brand for Europe. So it's also called Tresor over there. It's pretty huge on the continent. So great experience there, managing and running brand strategy and brand ideas at a European level that's applicable to different markets, and they can adapt locally. And then from there, really fortunate to get the opportunity to move to the States. So I've been in the States for about 5 years now, and I worked on the global business, managing the Kellogg master brand as we were activating behind that for a few years. And then I moved to the US business. So I've been over the last 3 years working on the frozen breakfast category and managing Eggo, which is an absolute gift of a brand. And that was almost like a completely different job because it's a different category moving into frozen, different supply chain, different customer dynamics. And then actually very recently, I think it's like week 3 or 4 now, I'm now full circle back on cereal, and managing a part of the kid family portfolio for cereal. So that's my background.
Well, fantastic. Well, I know you have a lot of perspective, and I know I enjoyed speaking to you last week. So why don't we talk a little bit since you've been at multiple areas of Kellogg? Why don't we talk a little bit about, obviously your most recent experiences with frozen breakfast,
Hmm.
but talk a little bit about how does Kellogg approach in marketing from a global level to regional level to sort of to a category level, to a brand level. So maybe just give us a sense of the approach of where's the commonality,
Yeah.
and then where does the specific brands and categories and regions uh, do things on their own?
Yeah, so I mean, each brand and each region are going to have their own strategy based on their own objectives and problems that they need to solve. But we do have a universal approach as we think about marketing and driving consumer engagement across Kellogg. So I would say there's like three big things. Firstly, it kind of sounds a bit 101, but we ensure that we have really strong strategic foundations and strategic underpinnings for our brand. So it's really important that we articulate a very clear purpose that the brand has in consumers' lives. And for me, and it's really important that that brand purpose isn't too lofty, and it's something that's really actionable. So I know when I get up in the morning and I go to work, I know what my brand is there to do for consumers, and it serves as that North Star. And then married with a really strong human insight, you will get to that universal brand idea that will really resonate with consumers on an instinctive human level. And we activate against a true brand idea year in, year out, consistently, but keeping it fresh to resonate. And then we at Kellogg, we strive to build experiences for consumers, not media plans, right? And we come at that from a real behavioral lens. So, what behavior are we trying to impact and we trying to change? And how do we make those experiences more immersive for consumers versus it just being, well, here's our message and we want to get out there. So, we don't think TV ads, we think sort of the full experience. And then finally, we aim to take a full funnel approach to marketing. So, yes, we will be in those big awareness building channels, But then we also look to leverage data lower down the funnel and look to reach custom audiences, drive version creative to build stronger consumer engagement and relevance, and ultimately drive conversion, right?
Great. So it sounds like there's sort of a common Kellogg framework and principles.
Yes.
And then it's really up to their different regions with their goals. And then, of course, it sounds like to sort of achieve those objectives even down to a brand level, but there's this sort of common framework that guides all the different brands across Kellogg.
Absolutely, and we use that globally and regionally. And I think at particularly at a global regional level, if you're managing a brand at that level, it's really important then that you build a really strong brand idea that can be adapted locally. And maybe the execution is slightly different, but it all is in service of a brand idea that has a universal consumer insight at the heart of it that can resonate with consumers, universally.
Got it. And is there, so, it sounds like there's some KPIs that are similar, right? It's sort of, but it sounds like it's also could be a little bit different. And is there certain though core data that everyone shares? Like, is there a first party data across Kellogg that people will share across the organization?
Yeah, so we do have a huge bank for first party data. So we have a loyalty program, and that's driven through purchase data. So I think there's I don't know, for the US, I think there's 10 million active users within our loyalty program. So we're able to use that first party data to build out custom audiences, to build out more intelligently targeted plans. And then we also, we augment that with second and third party data with our partners as well.
And then do the individual brands have some of their own data, or is this sort of is most of the first? Because I know with CPG sometimes it's a challenge getting first party data, but I was just curious if, say, frozen breakfast as an example, is there frozen breakfast data specifically, or is it all really connected to the Kellogg loyalty data?
Yeah, so the Kellogg loyalty data can be broken down into subsets of brands, so you can get the data brand by brand as well, which is really it's really helpful. And I'll give a shout out to my Special K colleagues recently. They use that first party data to build custom audiences and look at zip codes and actually drive personalized messages based on purchase data. And so yeah, huge kudos for them to using that data in the right way.
Okay, fantastic. And I assume then there's some sharing though, because if there's common data, there's a common sort of Kellogg customer across categories, I suppose. But you can sort of but at the same time, there might be certain things that are more important to a specific brand, I would take.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way that we use that first party data in our kind of traditional CRM approach is that we will build out personalized emails based on that consumer's data and that consumer's purchase intent. So we use automation, and it will then automate and show different offers for different people based on their purchase behavior. So yeah, it's a great system.
Got it. So sharing, but then also being able to personalize, and then some specific brands can do things on their own as well that might resonate for their consumers. Fantastic. So let's segue now specifically to frozen breakfast. So what's your approach? Because you have to garner now. You have your own insights. So we have a sort of common framework. There's some common data, but then there's sort of insights that you need to garner that might be different than some of the other categories. So can you talk certainly to your strategy there and how are your approach to garnering those insights?
Definitely. And I couldn't be a stronger advocate for uncovering real human truths and real human insights to drive consumer engagement. I'm probably a complete broken record on it with my team and my agencies, but it's so important. And I think you have to really resonate with your consumer in a way in which they feel seen. And a brand needs to provide a credible solve to that tension. And that's where the magic is. So for me, a brand's success in consumer engagement is really understanding the true and authentic value that you can bring to consumers' lives. So there is a host of different ways that we garner insights. We use traditional research methods, whether that's focus groups or ethnography. But I really love using social listening to gain insight too. Social listening is like social channels are just a bank of insights. And blogs as well, parents blogs, etc. And then search terms, and also our own like consumer feedback through consumer affairs. So there's lots of different ways that we can gain insight. So for Ego, I think a really interesting example. We understand that universally mornings are really tough for parents. So I don't know, Erik, if you're a parent or there's people listening that have kids, but every morning is this constant set of repetitive battles, whether it's like asking them to put their pants on 10 times or brush their teeth. So we know that. And from social listening, it was really fascinating and surprising to learn that parents are around 40% less positive about breakfast when it involves their kids, which was a bit of a wow moment. And as a brand that is, a true breakfast brand, it's kind of a bit of an ouch, right? You want to change that. So we went a little bit deeper, and that's when we used like ethnography and consumer groups, and we understood that yes, parent mornings are hard. That's universal. But we went a little bit deeper, and we understood that from parents, being able to diffuse the tension in the morning and just get like one small win makes them feel like heroes, and they use that language. And for me, that's so powerful, really, really powerful. And I kind of call it the goosebump moment. And that really was the underpinning for our new campaign on Ego, which is Lego with Ego. And the whole idea of that is to let go and embrace a small win. And the superpower of our brand is that parents they're really happy to give Ego to their kids, and kids are really happy to eat it. So there's a real small win there. So essentially, we're a co-hero in the morning, and that's led to this idea, which I'm super proud of, and I would encourage anyone to go and watch the long form content we have out there, because it's brilliant. But we're basically just encouraging parents to be heroes.
That's great insight. I can tell you, as being a parent of a small child, that breakfast is a source of anxiety, because you need to get to school on time, and you want them to eat otherwise. So it's that's kind of interesting. I mean, obviously, today, where a lot of kids have been doing remote school, it's probably a new set of challenges. But so I can imagine. I mean, that kind of leads me a little bit of these things sort of changed, right? So, that's clearly, that tension is probably universal in the morning, right? That sort of anxiety. Are they going to eat? Are they going to be ready for school? So but I imagine that certain situations change. It could be macroeconomic situations like we're dealing now. It could be just other social sentiment. So I'm just curious, talk a little bit about, how this is sort of maybe always on, and how do you constantly tweak it, based on what the consumers are telling you?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. And you're right, things can change, but honestly, those universal insights, some things they don't, right? They stay the same. And I think you've picked up on a really good point, that in the last year, I think this insight is even more prevalent and mornings are even harder. And tapping into social, I think, is one of the ways that you can really keep on top of how things are changing or how things are evolving. And I'm telling you, the tweets and posts that parents put out there about their kids are absolutely brilliant. So we know that the behavior is there, and I go to social media so that I can vent, I can bring levity to the situation, and I can get a bit of camaraderie, show solidarity. So some of the things that we learned through that, so through some of the work that we did around the mornings and looking at things like social media and Google searches, we actually found out that daylight savings is probably one of the highest pressure points for parents in the morning, which was quite fascinating to me. But it makes complete sense. Like, the routine is disrupted. And that's actually a time that we went out and we launched a part of our campaign called the Logometer. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. But so that's something, that you learn. So it's almost just going deeper and deeper into the insights. And for me, that's where the magic is. So you have like that universal insight, but you learn more and more, and you can activate differently. So to that point, the logometer, which is something that we've launched recently, it actually uses the data in order to act in real time and drive in stronger consumer engagement. So as I said before, we know that parents are searching on the internet for ideas on how to make mornings easier, and they're also going to social media to vent. So we've partnered with Google and with Twitter to aggregate and analyze and monitor search terms and social sentiment every single week. And what we get is an algorithm and an index that tells us where that pressure is in the morning. So if we find that people are searching more for help, or there's a lot of hashtag mum fail out there, we know that the pressure is really high, and then we'll respond to that weekly. So if the logometer shows we're high, we might say, here's some free waffles, everyone, because you clearly need it. Or if it's medium, we might say, here are some ideas and some tricks to help diffuse the tension in the morning, like do a silly dance while the toaster is cooking the Eggo, for example. So it's great because this comes back to something I was saying earlier, is when we're not just building media plans, we're aiming to build experiences for consumers. We're using the data to help us do that in real time. And honestly, I think it's amazing that as a brand, you're offering real-time help using data to actually help your consumers and make a difference in their lives. So I hope that answers your question. There's a lot.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, it sounds like obviously you've got, sort of your ear, always listening to sort of like what's happening, what's their, I like that, love that legometer, Lego
yeah,
meter,
the
legometer. And so it's sort of understanding that sort of tension, or, and where to let go, and how can you as a brand facilitate that, so you have that connection with that consumer, and then being certainly cognizant of things that are going on. So for example, daylight savings, right? That makes complete sense, because then the kids are sleep deprived, and then it makes all that tension that much harder. So social sentiment, that's clearly that's a great way to sort of evaluate some of that. I just, because are there other ways that you garner sort of data on your insights? So yeah, panel-based. I was just curious if there's other methods as well that you're gathering data.
Yeah, so we talked a bit about first party and second party before. So one of the things that we do at Kellogg, and you know what, in all humility, we're on a journey here on using data and getting to data-driven marketing. And I think most CPG companies are, right? But I'm really passionate about this space, and I think there's just so much opportunity here. But for me, it's about purposely leveraging that data to create custom audiences and drive intelligently targeted plans and personalized content. And I think, ultimately, we would love to get to the point where we're at, where we're using machine learning and AI to actually drive more, I call it like mass personalization. So we talked a bit about our CRM program. So we use that in a predictive fashion to personalize messages and emails. But we also use that data with our programmatic partnerships to target audiences and deliver version creative. So one of the things that we've done on Lego with Eggo in particular, to acquire new audience, to acquire new users, we've looked at, we work with Google, and actually we've built out a sub-segment of parents based on their interest or their approach to targeting, and then we're building customized unique content with messages to put directly to them. So for example, one of our subsets, we call them like the 30-minute chefs. So they're looking at content where they can pull together quick recipes in a short amount of time. So our messaging about Eggo will be, hey, you can do it in 5 minutes. It's that kind of like customized content that will drive stronger resonance and relevance with our audience. Other ways that we look at first party data to drive more custom audiences, if we're looking to acquire new buyers, we can take lookalike and then build that out, or we can look at search keywords or affinities in order to target audiences. And then other ways we can do it, if we're trying to retain buyers, we look at, well, who's our medium or lapsed buyers, and then we can go and target them as well.
Yeah. I guess with the frozen breakfast category, there's, I mean, the audience is pretty well defined from a demographic or life stage perspective, right? It's sort of parents with small children, most I assume. So it's interesting to me is that when you're talking about segmentation and lookalikes, it's actually really at that point it's really behavioral based, right? Or these are people who
Yeah.
want quick breakfast, or these are people. So it sounds like you're really picking up on a lot of signals in the market to determine like if somebody fits into that category, right? Because that's not like that's probably not it's probably hard to procure data like that. And so it's we talked about this last week where CPG companies tend to be data starved because it's you don't often get the conversion signal because the retailers or the grocer is the one who controls the relationship with the customer. But it sounds like you're doing a really good job
Yeah.
of finding sort of mass market, what are the behaviors that make up this core audience, and then really going and finding those audiences.
Absolutely. And I think, it is also sometimes surprising to hear that CPG companies do have that first party data that is purchase led. So it's there, and it's a great resource. So we do have that. I mean, to your point, I mean, Ego target audience is parents of kids, parents with young kids. But you're right, you can then start to sub-segment them based on behavior. And I think that is really important because you can then drive more of a customized message based on their behavior, based on their purchase behavior. And I think that's where it gets really, really fascinating and interesting, because that's how you drive stronger engagement, right? Because you can be more relevant to that subset or to that audience. And like I say, we're on that journey at Kellogg. And I think we're doing a fantastic job. And we would love to get to the point where we are in that place of machine learning and AI, where it's you can really drive stronger mass personalization.
That's great. And then when you actually target them, like obviously you have an agency, you are clearly partnering with Google very closely, and I'm sure the social platforms. But when you start talking about channels, right? So if it's digital, if it's print, or when you're now looking at your mix and sort of determine the optimal way to sort of then reach the customer across different channels and publishers, things like that. Can you just talk a little bit about formulating that strategy?
Yeah, sure. And I think that's kind of getting to the measurement side of things, right? And the way that we approach it is that there's sort of three ways. So firstly, we optimize in flight, and use like near real-time sales signals. So we partner with like a Verizon and Nielsen Catalina to do that. So we're actually then optimizing to those higher performing audiences or placements or even messaging. So I love the fact that we do that in real time. And in Kellogg, we do that on a weekly basis in a meeting called the Cube with a K. See what we did there? And so we're optimizing every single week to make sure that we're getting to higher performing channels and we're getting to a stronger ROI. So that's a really great way that we optimize. And then we also have the usual kind of 6 to 8 post campaign reviews with NCS and looking at our return on ad spend, penetration, retention, and then the bigger marketing modeling mix where we'd look at return on investment and sales. So we're kind of doing it in those 3 stages.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense. And I guess a lot of that, I mean, I know, so it sounds like you have a lot of internal data scientists. So curious, is a lot of that, those insights and those mix models and sort of where the investment is a lot of that done in-house?
A bit of a mix, yes. So like in-house and agency, and look, that is not my area of expertise.
Yeah.
I'm not a data science, but I would love to be. And what a great title to have, to be like a data sciences. That would be fantastic. But
Yeah. Well,
it's a mix, and it's great. It's superb to have those people who are the experts. And so a bit of a mix of in-house, in-house and agency. So
and you obviously you apply. I mean, you clearly understand the application of it, right? Because you get the insights.
I trust them.
Right. So they're deriving for you. This is what the data is telling us, and you're using that to kind of develop the campaigns and things like that. And so I imagine you work quite closely to sort of interpret some of the outputs.
Yeah.
And so, so that's, I mean, so it is, let me also, you talked about, you work obviously, say with Catalina, like you're going to get some signals from the cash register, right? So you're going to get through some providers. Are there other sort of indirect, because you talked a lot about social sentiment and so influencing. So what would be some of the other kind of KPIs besides sales, right? It sounds like you're really listening to a lot that's in the market. So just talk to some of the sort of indirect KPIs.
Yeah, definitely. And of course that will change depending on your the different brands and different objectives. But so for Ego in particular, for Lego with Ego, sales offline and online are really important. And actually we have a partnership with Micmac where we're building out more shoppable media, which is fantastic. Also, we talked a lot about our loyalty program, but sign-ups to our loyalty program is really important too. And then general like social sentiment and social engagement. I know that there are softer measures there, and even to the point of how much UGC do we drive? How much are people actually engaging back with us on social? So those are some of the key KPIs or more softer measurements outside of sales.
Right. And it sounds like then you'll adjust based on some of those different measures as well, right? So it's, ultimately, obviously everyone wants to grow sales, right? Because we're in the business of earning income for our companies.
For sure.
But of course, then there's the sort of leading indicators, right? So what is the social sentiment? What are they telling us? What is what are the messages? And it sounds like at Kellogg, you have you're really looking at, you have these principles, and then you have all these different measures and sentiments and indirect measures. You talked also about then, let's talk about then the delivery a little bit. So then when we talked last week, you mentioned, working with celebrities. So talk about some of the building that relationship with the customer and just the different methods. Then when you're finding these insights, you say, okay, let's engage with them. Talk a little bit about some of the partnerships that you've done to sort of activate.
Yeah, and this comes back again to building experiences with our consumers, and come straight back to the tweets and posts that you see in social media for parents. I think I remember seeing one that was like, so I gave my child a choice this morning of, do they want to wear this shirt or this shirt? And child falls on the floor in tantrum, and I'm like, good choice. Those are just like fabulous tweets and posts, and I love them. So what we actually did with that, because that's the behavior, we teamed up with a squad of celebrities who are parents and really genuinely believe and agree with this insight and are feeling that pain every morning. So Melissa Joan Hart was one of them, Sean Johnson, Mark Ingram. And they then went out and responded to these parents' tweets with a personalized message. So saying, yeah, totally get you, stand in solidarity, and everyone needs a small win. And then we'd sent them some free Ego. So a really great way to resonate with the behavior, right? So in that channel, doing exactly what they're doing there, and just showing that camaraderie and solidarity. So it's a really, really neat campaign. And that's where, obviously we drive earned then, and earned becomes another KPI.
Right. And it's so interesting how, the message has evolved over time, right? Lego my ego, to it's okay to let go, right? It's okay to let go. And so just maybe, what's next? Like, where do you see some of I mean, and maybe not even frozen breakfast, but, in general, just, CPG, we're like, the theme here is, of course, customer engagement. So it's just like, what's, for other CPG, for other marketers out there, like, just staying relevant. And so the message, even a classic message like Lego my ego, staying fresh and staying relevant, and then evolving it, further as things change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Lego my ego isn't necessarily going away, right? And we know that's one of the most salient lines out there. And that was built on the premise of the brand promise that, you know, it is a small win. Everyone loves Eggo, right? Kids love it, parents love it, parents are happy to give it. And that was more of Lego my Eggo. It's so good, I want to keep it for myself. So it's like the underpinning is still the same. It's just we've come at the insight in a different way, and now it's about helping parents let go. And so I would say insight is so important. To be able to connect with your consumer on a true human level is so important, but you have to be able to solve that tension with your brand, which is why I come back to your purpose shouldn't be lofty. Your purpose needs to be actionable. You need to exist for a reason, and that you can genuinely make a difference in consumers' lives. And then the other thing is experience over media plans. I mean, the way that consumers consume media these days is so fragmented. You know, they're constantly raising the bar, and you have to constantly raise the bar and delight them and resonate with them in new and in distinctive ways, even though the strategic underpinnings will be the same. So it's just like constantly raising the bar of like, it's, you know, these immersive experiences for consumers.
Yeah. And I mean, in many ways, you know, when you think of the brand over time, obviously the signals now that you have are so much more real time than we had in the past, right? Which I guess it really raises the stakes, right? Because it's yeah. You talked about mass personalization before. I thought that was really interesting, where you're responding, and you know, a whole strategy can really be updated on a weekly basis based on the sentiment in the market.
Yeah. And I think that's it, right? The logometer, that for me is just I'm super proud of that, because you are genuinely reacting to consumers in real time based on real data, rather than it just being, okay, we're going to put a TV ad out there. You know, this is something that we change week in or week out, and we're using insight to actually help them. And that's the stuff that I think is magic, and that's the stuff that's going to just you're going to have to keep constantly raising the bar on. You know, I think Spotify is a great example of using data to build consumer engagement. You know, they use their own data. I think the campaign was the campaign was like a year in review or something, where they used the data to say, here, this is what you've been listening to. And like, consumers love to talk about themselves. They want to know about themselves. They want to know about their own data. And what a great way to use data to actually connect in real time with consumers. And I think that's the future. I think data-driven marketing is absolutely the future. I mean, we're doing it now, but it's those two ways. It's data to drive better experiences, to resonate, and then data to drive more personalized content to be more relevant, to drive conversion.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And it's also, you know, so much we hear, you know, in a lot of marketing and analytics, it's often easy to think of it as sort of direct response and sort of intent signals. And what's interesting, what I'm hearing from you, is that there's so much science and data around really the emotional connection to the customer, right?
Yes. Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. Absolutely.
And so it's really it's really a new meaning when where it's a sort of data-driven marketing and insights and garner, and and where sometimes you don't always get the direct signal. I mean, it sounds like you do get it sometimes, obviously, and you certainly you can look at sales data, but then it's really to look at the sentiment, the engagement, to really understand as you said, the tension. And then the change the message and the change the delivery of it, and you talked about and then the different partners to actually reach out and giving sort of promotional egos to facilitate
and they need it. Yeah, absolutely. And like, as a marketer, to be able to, it's going to sound super cheesy, but to be able to genuinely make a difference in your consumers' lives is it's really fulfilling.
Yeah, I could hear that, and who knew, right?
Who could do that?
Exactly, but that it makes complete sense, because I think a lot of us people, either as parents or just we were all kids at one point, and you can remember that sort of getting out of the house in the morning and parents wanting the kids to be satiated, and so that they can concentrate at school and to get out, and how do you do that quickly and in a way that's, so you don't ruin the day for everybody in the process. So it certainly makes sense. It sounds like I think there was one question that came in, certainly, like I would say, more there are other alternative methods of which engaging. So you talk about giving free, sort of promotional waffles, but are there other free giveaways and other techniques that you're using to kind of get that one-to-one engagement with the customer?
Yeah, and so as I spoke about with the logometer, yeah, giving people free waffles. I mean, obviously, people love free stuff, which is great, but we're also putting our money where our mouth is, because we're saying, hey, you're having a really tough morning this morning. Try Eggo tomorrow, because that's a small win. So it is a bit of like putting our money where our mouth is. But the other things that we're looking at, and again, this is using insights, we understand the parents kind of called them coping strategies. So what are the coping strategies to get through the morning? Doing silly dances was one of them. So that we then say, well, here's some tips and some tricks. So why don't you try making up a silly dance when the toaster is cooking an Eggo, and then when it pops, you do something silly. And it's stuff like that that can help diffuse the tension. So using those insights and then actually just giving our consumers advice and tips and tricks that they can use. And it comes right back to the behavioral lens. So if you can give them something that they then use and it works, they become advocates for you, and you're affirming the reason that the Eggo plays a role in their lives. So it comes back full circle.
Right. Can you talk a little logometer? I mean, I'm so fascinated by it. So what is it measuring exactly?
So it's a partnership with Google and with Twitter. So we're actually measuring search terms and like social hashtags on social media that ladder up to pressure in the morning. So like hashtag mum fail might be one of those hashtags that we follow, or help to make mornings better. That's something that someone would search. So that's then aggregated, and again, this is not my area of expertise, but into an algorithm that will throw out an index, and the index will tell us, is it a really high pressure morning based on those search terms, or is it low? And then we'll react to that. So if it's low, we'll be like, great, pressure's low this morning. Here's some new innovation, different innovation, or different products that you may not have used before. So why don't you try using like Eggo Mickey waffles, for example? So it's just, again, like that real-time data that we can respond to.
I see. So there's sort of a time and place for everything. If it's like the tension's high, then well, I guess if the tension's high, that's obviously an opportunity for you, because then you could reach out in ways to sort of where they really can connect with the brand and feel that you heard them and you understand them. And if the tension's low, then maybe that's an opportunity that you can upsell them, or you can introduce them to new ideas. And so it's taking that sort of real-time data to sort of actively communicate. And then I assume you do, I mean, you mentioned tweeting and having celebrities do it. And then I assume that there's also then the email campaigns, and you're following up with display ads, or you just, it's tell me a little bit of then like kind of bringing all that together. So it's like, hey, we have these are the sort of these are the insights that we have right now. Now sort of like give the marching orders to the sort of, be it the agency or the buyers, and just, understanding if some of the then KPIs and messaging is going to sort of start changing.
Sure. I mean, it comes back to what I was saying before about just optimizing in flight, and every week we have the Kellogg Cube that we look at those signals and we optimize as we go, and we'll see which messages are resonating more. But that insight is not going to change. The brand idea, that'll live for years. I think that's the beauty of it, right? You need an idea that you keep consistent, because you build those memory structures with consumers. The magic comes when how you refresh that message to keep it distinctive. So it comes straight back to what I was talking to at the very beginning, which is strategic underpinnings are so important. Having a North Star and everything in service to that North Star, and keeping that consistent to drive those memory structures is fundamental to brand growth.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And so maybe we'll even, because I know you switched over to cereal, and so maybe how's that going? Because it must be, is I know you're still, absorbing, but
Yeah.
is some of those metrics similar? Are you looking at sort of the tension in the morning? Are things sort of unique? It'd be just interesting to hear your perspective now moving into a new area of different things that either you can bring to them or the things that you're learning.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been on that cereal desk for like the last 3 weeks. But it's fantastic, and it's like the DNA of our company. So it's just amazing to be back on cereal. But it's exactly the same. It's like, what are those insights? What are the insights that help drive your brand? What's your brand purpose? And like, honestly, short answer is yes, exactly the same. It's